Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. I am your host, Sleepy Celestial. Now guys, this is going to be episode 8. We are almost down to the last episode of my Beyonce theory for chapter 4 as well as chapter 3, which is act 3 and act 4. Now this episode is going to be a very crucial episode. This is going to be titled The Land of the Echoville. Now this episode is going to be very important, so I want you guys to be very focused as we bring so much information. So during the Cowboy Carter tour, something piqued my interest, and then ever since then I had to go back and look for it. There's this tiny little house, just like when Beyonce closed out with Amen. There's a tiny little house that she mentioned that she'll never lived in. It's almost like this funeral apparel that she was basically mentioning. As she talks about the land of Echoville, from Travis Scott to then Beyonce releasing teasers for the Levi jeans for episode or chapter 4. I mentioned this in the episode that I covered the Levi jeans commercial breakdown. I believe that the next album, even though it's going to be a rock album, does so many ties into the fourth album, the fourth act of the entire trilogy. Now I mentioned before that it could have been a Destiny's Child, but I'm also planning to say too, the Echoville is going to be something such spiritual impact visually that it's gonna shake up the music industry. And I think after act 4, right, act 4 is gonna be, I would say, half music, half, and then the rest is visuals, with the collection of the 3 acts, which is the pinnacle of the 3 different acts, will combine to form the fourth act. We've seen Renaissance as the front face, Cowboy Carter as the middle ground, and then the last horse, which I mentioned, which was the Sir Davis horse, is gonna be the closeout. Beyonce has been teasing each and every lyrics as well as imagery depicting this road of Echoville. Even though on the teaser trailer for act 2, Beyonce almost hint that her road leaving Texas Hold'em from where she was going through Texas Hold'em, then now for the Cowboy Carter, as she closed out, we saw the same apparel from the Levi's commercial as she is leaving the western town. Like I mentioned before, America has a problem, wins a ticket. This little apparel from the Renaissance has me thinking over the years that the Echoville, the land of Echoville, and how everything kind of echoes back to America's roots. This is what it was basically saying. And also the Americas, right? The Americas that we think that she's talking about is the deities, the ancient practices of America, and the religious democracy tone for this next act. I think in page 29 of this newspaper script, and we've seen Beyonce use a lot of the newspaper when it came to the America Has a Problem part segment of the tour, and I think she loved performing that. And I think when she performed that, this is when she released more information on the other acts. From Renaissance, she also talked about Echoville Street. I even mentioned to you guys that in the Levi's commercial, Echoville is in a crossroad right in between leaving the Old Western 4. This was all hinted in the Levi's commercial episode chapter 4. And then the alien or the deity of the Echoville is the one that is riding Beyonce, almost like some Dante's Inferno inspired, because Beyonce is the traveler or the messenger and the traveler is the Echoville deity that represent almost as if like Hermes. It is traveling through space and time, and Beyonce sits in the back seat as this entity drives from universe to universe or dimension to dimension. It's almost as if she is mirroring the same Beyonce, but at the same time, this entity is traveling to different parts that gives you different versions of Beyonce. So almost as if Beyonce is literally using the almost the MCU formula, how she's creating these different timeline gaps, and within those timeline gaps, she is creating these new spaces that are allowing her to create these interesting but yet complicating spaces. I mentioned before in episode 7 that the Astrada Echo helmet, which is a very inspired Echo mysterious helmet that is in fashion, but this is like she is seeing the vision, but she is seeing the vision in so many different sides, almost as if Beyonce is practicing something of a state of an enlightenment with these trilogy projects. We know from Renaissance it was about to be a moment of us to be free, and Cowboy Carter is literally a liberation and history lesson from the past. We know that Cowboy Carter was first, and then came Renaissance, the party anthem that uplift hearts and made people very happy. Along these lines, we saw that the lines were very blurred from how Cowboy Carter was received and how it was perceived visually. I think what made this stand out for me is that what she plans on doing with these acts, and I think that, like I mentioned before, the third horse is going to be the one massive horse that's going to trample the other two. And another thing that I've learned is that Beyonce is also customizing her looks after different ancestral entities, but at the same time she is acknowledging the contribution of different civilizations in these acts, like almost as if the amount of religion and practices that pass through America, she is celebrating all of that. She's not just celebrating the black culture and anything that involves the black people's roots and how it came from. Even as if there's a picture where Beyonce had ginger hair, almost like this reddish brownish hair, which was pretty cool. And even the commercial for the Verizon I mentioned in the past, and how each of these segments, like the Barbie, was a inspiration during like the late like 50s and 60s, I would say. And Beyonce kind of mirrors those old golden times, I would say, in America. And like pink, the way it was very signified for femininity. And then boom, all this time when she mentioned on the Cowboy Carter, the presentation of Live Los Angeles attacks the 400-foot cowboy starring Cowboy Carter. Beyonce's mirroring different segments of America, and this film, the 400-foot woman, was inspired by that. And we knew that when that little clip visualizer of Texas Hold'em was being played, when she first released Act 2, Beyonce almost gave us snippets of the visuals, and all this time Beyonce was the 400-foot tall woman, and then she released a little bit of that in the Cowboy Carter tour. So when these Western hillbillies were looking at the sign, they were actually looking at Beyonce from the mountains to basically show how large at life she is. Just in the same way, Beyonce, I believe, will be putting all of the 3 acts together. Once these 3 acts comes together, I think something magical is going to happen in this. And like I said, with the 2 albums that are already out, and Chardonnay is going right back to the barn. It's crazy that a lot of people were speculating that Beyonce was gonna do something with Lady Gaga, which a lot of us were speculating that the tour dates between Lady Gaga and Beyonce was gonna align in the Las Vegas, but it ended up not being that. And I think Beyonce's smart enough too, by not releasing anything on her birthday. That would be too goddamn obvious. I think now she moved with such prestige, and that's why I say, if you want to know what's gonna happen next, she already gave us the clues. When she said closed, please call back, or please call again, almost hinting at telephone, how telephone started off with Beyonce picking up, or Lady Gaga picking up the phone, and you know, when she say hello, hello, I can hear, I can say, yeah, right, something like that along these lines. And with Telephone Part 2 has a major connection with Daughter, like the entrance from the transition from Daughter to from the transition to Black Betty to Daughter, the cinematography of this opera feeling. I think that the contribution of the democracy part of the Beyonce Cowboy Carter came in. There's a part that definitely stuck with me in this tour, which is propaganda, and how Beyonce emulates herself as the modern Uncle Sam of democracy, and how the color that we've been seeing roughly is the red, white, and blue in the stars, just like what's his name, the Samuel L. Jackson did the same thing, and how he did that similarly to Kendrick's Super Bowl. So in a way, Beyonce, and then you could hear a little snippet of Kendrick's Lamar turn his TV off, like inside of America Has a Problem. Now, what does this all mean? It means that maybe Telephone, and I'm gonna say this again, Telephone will kick off the Black Betty tour, or it will kick off one of the hits of, just like the 2 Most Wanted for Cowboy Carter. I think when Beyonce left with the motorcycle, almost as if like some Terminator type of feel, I think the grounded cover of how Cowboy Carter is gonna be is gonna, not Cowboy Carter, the 3rd act is gonna have this Terminator 1 and 2 as Beyonce goes back in the future to save herself. I have a weird feeling that Beyonce is referencing all of the great films in the past. So from Terminator and Skynet, you could think of Beyonce's trilogy as some sort of like Skynet. How it's like Matrix meets Skynet, and how every time Beyonce relives the trilogy, she comes back in a new form or a new reality. So with the 1st act, she came back with Renaissance, or you could say Cowboy Carter, and then came back again, she became Renaissance with this chrome, and then she died again, and then she came back now in this revolutionary look. And then the 4th act could be the reimagination, which will be the combination between these 3 acts. So like I said, guys, Part 9 is going to be insane, but like I said, Beyonce is doing something, it's going to be insane. See you guys.